So, thank you NPR for this picture. So this is kind of, so where are we now? Where are we, it's 57 years into the revolution. I have a picture of that and I didn't put it here, but 57 years in, 80% of the population born after the revolution. And we hear people who say, the government, can't really help you out, can't really be there for you. And then also that we're doing everything ourselves. And, you stand on your own. You and your family have to, innovate and create the new system. And politics isn't really going to help you. If you change the government, what does that do? But, we did actually get, one of our visits was to the U.S. intersection. So when it comes to Cuba moving forward, where is Cuba in the United States? I think I was probably one of the most pessimistic people in the group when it came to Cuba and the United States normalizing, or reestablishing is the correct term, reestablishing relations. Whenever I'm one of those NPR addicts, I have an NPR mug and an NPR shirt, and I wear it at the same time. And, and I listen every day, and they keep saying normalization. I'm like, no, right now, it's stepping stones.
When we read about the history of U.S.-Cuban relations, sometimes it was just really hard for me not to laugh. But I guess I can't completely come from that perspective because I'm not in the moment and I'm not in politics. But when you read it, it's literally phrases like, the journalist told the ambassador and told the president that Raul said such and such. It's just very, very, so many channels, of communication. And honestly, it could just take one thing and we're back to square one. So it's one of those things where you really don't know what could happen. My hope is that we do reestablish relations and work towards working with one another, because I think it's just kind of shocking that the government, I don't know, the way that Cuba's painted now is that, because there's communism, the people are bad, or like the place is bad. But no, I mean, the people who were born in that situation, they can't control that they were born in Cuba, and you definitely don't, you just see so much livelihood in Cuba, and there's definitely a richness of culture, and there's so much innovation, and there's a lot we can learn from Cuba, and I think it would be a shame to just continue to prevent other Americans from doing the same. And if anything, I feel really fortunate to be able to go on this field study. I don't know about Erin, but very unique opportunity. I mean, I really didn't have any idea, or I didn't know a lot about U.S.-Cuban relations, and I feel like your world changes a lot when you learn about it and you realize things are a lot more complicated than it seems. Like, you would like to say, well, obviously we'll become friends again, like we should, but you don't know, and it's not that simple.
Yeah, I think United States, in the public mind, that a lot of people have kind of pushed Cuba to the side as kind of uncharted land that we're not really going to be going to anytime soon. We're just going to let it be. Talking to a lot of Canadians, it was really interesting because the vast majority of, well, not vast, but majority of tourists going to Cuba are Canadian. And so they're just kind of wondering, U.S., what are you doing? Like, why is your policy still your policies? So every single time they saw us, they were amazed, number one. And then two, wanted to talk to us about our policies. And three, I always felt were kind of amazed that we had a positive impression of Cuba. And because I think they kind of extrapolated from our policies to kind of talk about how all Americans felt about Cuba. So, moving forward, we'll have to see. Like Monica said, it's kind of the gist of things. It can go back to square one. Being at the intersection, one of the things that was said, if they ask for Guantanamo Bay back, we're done. Essentially, close the book, walk out. The eagle head from the statue will not be replaced.
Yeah. And that definitely didn't coincide with a lot of news articles you see, because a lot of them say that Fidel's asking for Guantanamo Bay. And you're like, it's not what the consul general said they would give. So, not sure how that will work out.
So there's vocal strong-arming, and then there's more light touch in reality. But, we'll have to see where things kind of go. I kind of feel U.S. media is putting it in a lot more positive light than it actually is. Every single time every single day, listen to NPR, there's something on Cuba. prior to maybe before December 17th, there were crickets. Nobody cared. Well, maybe we cared, we just didn't report on it. But, you know, at this point they're reporting and they're saying we're getting there, we're getting closer. Last Wednesday, the president of Cuba and the president of the United States talked on the phone. Oh my God. Saturday they shook hands, they touched. Like, you know, they're doing a lot of fanfare for something that's still kind of precarious. Cuba, I think, has a lot to gain from United States kind of restoring connections with them. Because when we were talking about, we didn't talk too much about the FDI, mostly I did because I'm an econ major and I can't get over it because it's the greatest thing ever. See, this is, I ran him crazy the entire trip. But, you know, U.S. firms, they want to be able to have contact. When we had a speech on tourism, the guy who was giving the presentation was saying, we have plans drawn up. We have locations we have already decided are great for more like resorts. They have it sitting around. They're waiting for the money to come in. That's essentially it. And so I'm just like, oh, well, if they're doing that with tourism, how many more, you know, possible opportunities are sitting on the sidelines with plans drawn up, but they just don't yet have the funds. So, you know, we'll see how quickly things happen. We'll also see, you know, when it comes to the embargo, we haven't even said that word once in this presentation. That is amazing. But, you know, we'll see where the embargo goes, because coming from an economic standpoint, it wouldn't be good for Cuba for it 100% be lifted automatically, no barriers whatsoever. So even if it is lifted, and in one time, you know, there'll probably be some barriers on the Cuban side preventing the free flow, just so that their own economy doesn't collapse from all of these cheaper goods flooding in. But I think, got any more? Not I bored everybody with economics.
We could talk longer, but.
Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take a couple, because
Yeah, both of us have class at 1. I'm in Bascom, so I can stick around and then run over. But
Susan and I can stay longer. After they're gone, we can tell
Couple
you.
is 2, or how many questions you said?
Oh,
Couple is 2 questions?
Randy and Susan can
They got
see.
about 10 minutes, and then
Yeah.
these guys can
We can stay.
yeah.
yeah, he's actually more intelligent than us as well. So. And a master debater. So.
Well, I have a question. I was curious whether you guys had time to meet with any Cuban university students when you were there.
I think we went quickly in and out. Did we ever talk to a university student?
We talked to an American, well, actually, no, she's Croatian, but grew up in Canada. We talked to Martina, who was a
We met
graduate
with her friend
student.
Eduardo at the art.
Oh, and is he currently?
Ah, that's true. But I didn't go in depth conversation with them.
I just
Because
know
one
maybe
thing
you
that was
visited
missing
some.
is they weren't keen on having a group of Cuban students meet with our group of
Okay,
American
that's kind of what I was
students.
wondering.
There
Okay.
was still,
Okay.
given we didn't create the schedule, you know, Randy knows a
Yeah.
lot more on how limited we were
Yep.
in what would be allowed, but, you know, prior to us going, our schedule had to be sent both the U.S. to get the
Mhm.
Treasury Department to get the visa, and then also approved by the Cuban government, along with, I think, like a month or 2 prior, our roommate list, who was where, had to be sent to them.
We made 3 separate requests of 3 separate universities for meetings with groups of students.
Yeah.
And each request was met with, that'd be a really great thing. And then, which meant no. Which meant no.
Sounds like a great idea.
The University of Havana, 2 parts of the University of Havana. The other was a technical university. I'm blocking on the name.
In Havana?
In Havana. Yeah, they were all in Havana. And the third was actually the agricultural university.
Oh, that's perfect.
Because I tried, yeah, and I mean, I didn't push it harder than that. I thought maybe after doing 1 trip, that request might be met more favorably in the future, after they've had a chance to, you know,
Yeah.
because we had a lot of professors with us.
Mhm.
But they did not want us to organize a formal session with the students.
Interesting.
Yes.
When you were traveling around and you left out the word embargo till the end here.
The blockade was left out completely.
Don't know how we managed that.
But I mean, did you kind of think about that as you walked around and saw the people in their little carts and their,
Yeah,
crowded into apartments that?
I don't really know, just because of how much income they actually have. Maybe remittances is playing a bigger, role. And then, when we're flying out of Miami, Randy told us to watch, essentially, because there was a toilet, a wheelchair, a microwave, a refrigerator, two 60-inch flat-screen TVs, all going in a plane to go to Ghana. So it's one of those things where I'm kind of skeptical that even if the embargo was lifted, how much they would personally be able to afford those items. But, you've been a lot more, so.
I think if you go to Cuba, don't think about the embargo. You miss the big point of what Cuba has suffered for many years here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that we didn't.
And I say that not only just in terms of economics, but just the personal tearing apart of families who, somebody leaves to go to, someplace, leaves Cuba, they leave their parents, they leave their grandparents, they leave kids sometimes. I mean, it's a much more pervasive act of the United States that affects not only just the economics of Cuba, but the family structure.
Social fabric.
Yeah, the whole fabric.
The-
I think
Yeah.
every speaker addressed the embargo, the blockade. I think
Yeah,
every speaker we had addressed the blockade from one perspective or another.
the population of Cuba is smaller than it was at the time of the revolution. You're not going to find that in a lot of countries where the population has decreased. So there's definitely a lot.
Sadly, it's a lot of the people your age that are, up and coming and have careers in front of them. And it's a real brain drain.
Yeah, our tour guide said that 9 of our 10 friends are in the United States. So it is an evident reality. I thought one thing that was, and like economically speaking too, one of the cigar speakers said that of the cigar market, 60% of it is Americans. And Cuba doesn't have access to that. So I mean, yeah, not just like socially and economically, for sure.
What do you think, how do you think Cuba can benefit from better, what you call better relations with the U.S.? How would they benefit?
Well, I would hope that there would be an encouragement for cultural and social exchange. So I think there's going to be a study abroad program in the summer
That's me.
in Cuba. Isn't it through the...
You're talking about the one that,
There's a study abroad, this summer or
Yeah.
something?
well, there was something going on through another UW campus, if that's what you're talking
Because
about.
you spoke mostly about
Not
businesses
Madison.
wanting to go there,
Mhm.
but how can that benefit them?
It'll depend in, what areas those businesses are. I know Randy at one point actually gave a rather moving, great presidential bid on, relations and how their education system, when it comes to being, compared to Latin America and compared to other countries in development, they're doing extremely well.
In Wisconsin?
Oh, no, in Cuba. Well, not, but, and just because of that higher education, there's a lot more opportunity to be in areas where the public can actually be benefited. You can see in other countries where it moves to an extractive economy because of, just their riches. And then you end up with, other developmental issues when it comes to economics and, anyway, I'm going to move away from that one. But, if it moves to areas where their educated workforce can be used, I think the amount of money that every single person can receive and be able to live off of will most likely increase. And another thing would probably be, if it might be a tourism, but more money is coming in, that might increase government revenue, and maybe that might lead to higher wages, because in some level, a lot of people, like the veterinarian who is a BC taxi driver, he doesn't earn a living wage, so he moves away from the educated, he ignores his education and moves somewhere else. So if somehow the government is able to keep people in these educated fields, there's probably going to be a lot more growth benefit for them in the future. But it depends on how the government takes it.
What inspiration could you give to Governor Walker? Okay.
I'm from Texas, so that doesn't mean I'm conservative, but I can probably say he didn't graduate. I'm as close as he is to a college degree at this point. So I'm going to leave it there. Yes.
Yeah, Jose Marti, I think he's a Cuban, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once said that our coffee may be bitter, but it's our coffee. And I noticed that when you said you were talking to the girl, she said, "This is our thing, and we've got it back." This whole idea of group identity, of solidarity, versus instead of saying, what we would say, "This is my TV and this is my something," rather than our. And I'm just wondering, because they say Cuba is very child friendly. People seem happy. I've seen they have a Cuban film festival here. You'll see the people there. They seem to be dealing with life much more happily than we deal with life here in the United States. So I mean, there are bad things and good things to everything, and of course, starvation is. I just want to know, because I've never been to Cuba. Is your impression of the people that they're oppressed and somebody's sitting on their face? Or do they seem happy? That's the question.
I feel like Cubans seem empowered and happy. I mean, talking to our tour guide, when she grew up, it was really hard growing up poor. But she had come to a conclusion that where she was now in her life is she got herself there along with her family and the support of her friends. And whenever talking to Cubans or just like walking around, like you see Cubans like hanging out at parks a lot, and it's really evident that there's a relational focus to their culture, and I think that's what carries a lot of them through life, and that's probably why a lot of them are happy, because people, they live with the generations of their family, and I mean, given the embargo, unfortunately, that's not always the case, but for the Cuban families that are together or that are dependent on their communities, you see that makes an impact. When we walked through the hospital, the doctor that gave us a tour was like hugging everyone and kissing everyone he walked by. So I would say the relational focus of their culture definitely like prevents you from thinking like people are oppressed and really sad and suffering. Like I definitely wouldn't say like that's surface level. You wouldn't see that. If you were just passing through Cuba, I don't think you would think that.
Oh, you guys.
Yeah.
You guys have to go to class.
Yeah. Thanks so much, you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
We already took them out of class for 3 days at the front end of our trip, so. Susan, I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions. That one of our students asked that question in a very specific way to multiple speakers and asked, what specific companies would you like to see come in